something happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there, telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down. There's battle lines being drawn. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds are getting so much resistance from behind. Time we stop. Hey, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Hello there.
Hello.
Welcome once again to Day Release. It's me, Clive Davis, and it's him broadcasting from the bottom of the sea.
Yeah. SpongeBob Robin. French roll.
Robin Roll.
Yeah. Go on then. What
Right.
were you talking about this week?
Good smooth opening as always.
Yeah. No stops and starts for us.
No. So this time we're dealing with a few less films than usual. But two of them were fucking long, so it kind of works out about the same.
Yeah.
Right? So I guess we'll kick off with a two-parter. So some of you may be aware of a monster kind of box office juggernaut out of India called Ponniyin Selvan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a two-part epic, each part running 2 hours and 45 minutes long, right?
Yep.
So
it would count in the genre of historical fiction.
Yeah. Speculative historical fiction, I guess. So I looked this up. So apparently it's based because I'm assuming for you this was totally new territory.
It was new territory. I had absolutely no idea what was going on until towards the end of the second part, and then I started to sort of become fairly familiar enough to. When I read up on it, I sort of
yeah. But there was nothing. I mean, for me, I was quite shocked actually, and it's like usually if I'm watching something vaguely historical, even if I don't know it particularly well, there'll be a little something that I know that name, or I've heard of that, but this was just nope.
I mean, I didn't look enough into it, but I did wonder whether the reason why we don't tend to think of India as a whole as having massive dynastic empires, where we do with China, we do with even the Mayans and stuff. I mean, they've got a is it a wonder of the world? I'm not sure, but I know the temple that is at the end of this film. Anyway, don't want to jump ahead, but I wondered if it was just the colonial thing, like.
Yeah. It's interesting actually you mentioned that. Same with me when I was researching it, and because we're talking 10th century Chola dynasty, and I had the same feeling as you. I was like, oh yeah, of course they had these long dynastic periods of time which you do associate with, even if you don't know your Ming from your Qing, and you don't know exactly which came which, you at least know there was that in Chinese history, and for some reason we tend to forget of that part of the history of the Indian subcontinent.
No, I had no clue, and I don't know why. I mean, anyway, so
I suppose you could talk about this film in a way actually for non-Indian viewers. Could be considered a bit of a gateway drug in that way, right? Like
it is somewhat, but I think it's almost so it involves the Chola sort of king, empire or kingdom, or the emergence of the Chola Empire.
Yes, yeah.
and then having looked it up, there's the Pandayas, and then the I can't remember the other ones, but they're all in southern India, so it's got nothing's mentioned much about the northern part, which was sort
Right.
of, I can't remember who that's run by, but that was an even bigger empire.
Right.
Yes.
And again, probably a lot of this backdrop is kind of more like, maybe people don't know it in and out, but I would imagine a lot of Indian folk kind of have the shape of it in the same way as we don't maybe necessarily remember. We kind of know our European kind of history to a certain extent, right? Like we know.
Well, I was recommended these two films on the back of having watched RRR, and spoken to I think spoken to one of the local shopkeepers about that, who's a Tamil, and then he said, "Oh, this is the new Tamil one coming up."
Right.
And then I spoke to someone else in that shop, and he didn't seem to. I said, I didn't know much about the history. Did you? He was like, "No, not really." So I don't. I mean, obviously, that's one person.
Yeah, and I don't know. Maybe he grew up in the UK. Maybe.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
But no, anyway, I mean, is the person who was it a recommended, or had the film not come out? Was it
it
more like
come out? He said the next big one is the big Tamil one that's coming out is Ponniyin Selvan, and I got to write it on a piece of paper, and that's how we ended up where we are, confused, and 6 hours later.
So specifically, this is based on this novel from the 50s by the author Kalki Krishna Murthy, who I think it was serialized at first. It was like a serialized novel, and then it was put out in novel form, and apparently considered one of the great kind of Tamil novels, right? I think they tried doing versions of it many times over the years, right? But this is the kind of the big definitive epic that they've always wanted to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why they held off. Generally the Indian film industry has been growing and growing, and then the effects have got there just about. Right. I mean, there were some patchy parts, but
but nothing really overly distracting, right?
No,
because it's all set in such a it feels of a piece, like in terms of its historical background. It has that vaguely fantastical feeling, but so I wasn't looking for super realism necessarily. It seems almost like it's almost like a fantasy film, isn't it? Like
Lord of the Rings.
But it doesn't have like monsters and things like that. It's kind of quite grounded, but it still has that epic fantasy feel.
I kept expecting it to have some elements of sort of magic or mysticism in it, and it didn't have any, as far as I remember. No, other than kind of sort of heroic strength. But it was like you say, a good introduction into, or good gateway drug. Not really an introduction, because you just you might come away with a kind of like a semblance of there was some big shit went down in a, and then you look at the map of India, and it's only a kind of, the Chola Empire was quite a small part. I think there was the Chandaya as well, which were the Chandaya.
I suppose as well, after he became the what was his name, Arun Mozi Varman, or Raja the First, as played by Jayam Ravi in this movie. He ended up, and it spread, and they like took over Sri Lanka stuff as well, right? Yeah, but yes. So basically, that's the kind of, I suppose other films would focus on. In fact, other films have focused on him, right? 'Cause he's like considered, big iconic kind of king of kings, right? But
Mm.
the way in here, I suppose, is who would be considered as, I suppose, a side character in other ways of telling this story, right? The character of Vanya Thevan, as played by superstar Vikram, who's in traditional Indian cinema style, probably playing a character a few decades younger than he actually is, right?
Oh, right.
But you kind of get used to that with there's still a bit of there's still that syndrome, I think, in a lot of Indian cinema, right, where superstar actors can play the dashing young hero into their 60s, right?
If they're male, yeah.
Yeah, as long as they change the women regularly.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of like so we're not gonna even try and do the plot, because that's kind of beyond. I would just take ages for us to explain everything that happened, and then
would get hundreds of details wrong.
And it would be just boring to hear us talk about it anyway. But let's just say there's a huge kind of it's basically a civil war situation, really, isn't there? And there's very clear good guys and bad guys, and people vying for power and for the throne.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I found interesting was whether there was a sort of, because the Pandayas were seen as almost it seemed to me like they were seen as a kind of your typical villain sort of thing, which I thought was, because they're Tamil as well, right? It's just Tamil region, and this is where I don't know what I'm talking about, but it seemed like there was some sort of rivalry aspect where you'd have to be from around there or from India to understand that kind of why they were. To me, they came across as a sort of, the villain, sort of your more typical villain, sort of like Dundu, every time really muscly and
the same way as they deal with like the Persians in what the fuck's that? 300.
Oh, 300.
Yeah.
So, well, I was thinking more like the kind of or the sort of the rebel aspect, like sort of like, you wouldn't be surprised if one of them went like that, or something like kind of snarling.
One of them turned into Rick Mayo.
Yeah, evil Rick Mayo.
Right.
Anyway, they get kind of, they had this sort of that slightly kind of caricaturist snarling aspect to them, but I have no idea if I'm way off there or not. I've kind of carefully tiptoed into another civil war.
I'm sure people will let us know if we've offended anyone. I suppose it's if you were to compare it to this is so far back in history that you can't have colonial villains doing that, right? So they've got these people instead in place of evil white people.
Yeah, maybe, but I feel like there's a whole north of India that is completely out of the reach of this film, and I think they were possibly more sort of a bigger empire and sort of more scary, but they weren't touched as I have no idea why. Anyway, or whether it's got anything to do with anything. But again, with the history I was looking at as well, it seemed to be just, we had this giant, massive, supermassive empire there, and just ignore it. I don't know what that's about.
So this is a specifically southern story.
Yeah.
Which lends itself, I suppose, again, speculation, but with the success of a few other films, there seems to be a slightly kind of there seems to be this drive to really separate the Tamil industry from Bollywood, right? It's really kind of trying to go head to head against, like, look, we can make films just as good, right? And I suppose this is a good vehicle for that, right? Let's choose a specifically Tamil story as like our next big kind of vehicle to celebrate our specifically Tamil language film culture.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it was a sprawling epic. I wouldn't say I kind of enjoyed it, but
yeah, see, I didn't. I have to admit,
some of it, I don't know. As me being kind of like but the bits I enjoyed were the bits that were because it was quite Hollywood, really. It followed a lot of kind of Hollywood to me, and a lot of Hollywood tropes, you know, that you kind of expect. You know, gruff, deep voice and so. And but
Ray Winston in it.
Yeah, I remember Ray. I mean, I quite liked what is this Aditya, whatever. The main the brother, the eldest brother.
Right.
He was like a. He was like constantly stressed out guy. I mean, quite like that aspect. So the bits that I enjoyed, and
there's a shitload of famous people in this film. We should mention. But yeah, Vikram is our main kind of like a can-do kind of brother to the end kind of hero, right? With this bromance with Jayam Ravi, and also a romance. So the main female lead is Ashwakya Rai Bachchan, who's also huge. And we should mention as well that the music is by A.R. Rahman, and you know, if you know your film score stuff, again another huge name, right? So of course there are the expected kind of musical numbers here. Oddly, I don't know, the musical numbers were kind of some of the musical numbers were some of the more enjoyable bits for me, because it seemed as if the film took a bit of a break from all the kind of confusing multi-character stuff, and I could just enjoy. But they were kind of also like not. I don't know. They weren't huge. Like I thought they would have brought out something a bit more. Like now we're really going to floor you with some amazing kind of singing and dancing musical scenes. But they were. I don't know. They were fine, but you were saying this is very Hollywood, right? And they as well were very like. They were good, but they were only good in like a pop auto-tuned. Oh, that Taylor Swift song isn't bad, I suppose, kind of way, rather than something else.
They weren't your kind of. They didn't do a song and dance number sort of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they were slightly more. They were slightly more integrated, right? It was like they were always like they were.
They never detracted from the historical epic. You know, as in they never. Yeah, it was trying to go for authenticity the whole time.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them exactly diegetic, but kind of. It was always like, oh, let's have a look what's going over there for a minute. Like it was always a performance or something that was going on, rather than the leads suddenly jumping into song and dance for no reason, musical style, right?
Yeah.
But that for me, that I don't have a problem with that, because I've become attuned to Indian cinema in general over the years. So the bursting into musical stuff is I always quite look forward to that stuff. So, although I understand for some international audiences that stuff is sometimes a bit of a turn off, right? A lot of people, when they go and see a horror film or a thriller or something, they don't want it to turn into a musical, whereas I quite like that.
But yeah, I mean, I was impressed by the costumes and the sets and
Oh
all
yeah,
the
all that's
staging and stuff,
amazing. Yeah.
and that was enough to kind of to keep my interest, and also as the film developed into the second part, I think that kind of drew me in. So I was sort of more on board by the second one. The first, part one, I was,
Hmm.
I was confused and kind of bewildered, but it went by sort of fairly quickly. But I was just, yeah, confused and bewildered, and then come the second part, I was kind of more invested in the whole thing,
Right.
because I guess, um, by then I had a sort of semblance that it was more of a, it was based on real history, and
Hmm.
I also could just, I could enjoy aspects. I just think that the kind of the epic battles, sort of stuff, and all the kind of lettuces, and they went through 1,000 lettuces and celeries just with all there was a lot of that kind of like, like ha 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 ha, and 15 people go and die, because everyone's made of celery, apart from the hero, sort of thing.
Right.
And
I thought it was strange that the first film kind of built to an action set piece on board a ship, right? Which was not bad. But I thought they'd then try and top that in the second one, but that never really
well,
happened. It never really built a peak.
they had their epic battle, but it was just it was kind of like, it was kind of needless for a start. This girl was completely needless. There wasn't any what sort of, so there's your classic kind of, the two heroes, or the the bad protagonist and the bad
Mm.
antagonist, and they see each other through the battle. Did that
Right.
twice, so, which is a Hollywood kind of trope, and just in general, we're all so used to Hollywood style battle scenes that there's nothing really more to add to it. So one thing I liked was, like I was saying, the costumes and the staging and things, but the crowns were nice and novel, weren't they? I mean, just
Good crown action,
good,
yeah.
very good. I mean, I beat every other crown I think I've seen.
Yeah.
I would kill for one of those crowns.
They were pretty good crowds. My for some reason I never got. It was odd. Like from the beginning, I don't know, the pacing of the thing just threw me off. Like I just couldn't get into it at all. Like, and it wasn't as if nothing was happening. There was lots of things happening,
Yeah,
but just it was like wallpaper or something, and
it
I
seemed
couldn't
like loads
get
of
into
stuff
it
was
at all.
happening really slowly, or like
Yeah,
loads of
I
stuff
don't
was
know. I
happening
just it
both
didn't.
fast and slow at the same time.
I couldn't tap into it, and I hate to make this comparison because the thing is, I had a lot of goodwill towards this film. I was looking forward to it. I was thinking, oh yeah, this is and this new big epic historical Tamil record-breaking film. I'm looking forward. This would be something you'd like to champion. But yeah, it wasn't a million miles away from the kind of vacuous kind of feel that I got from those fucking underworld films or something like that. Like those films, for whatever reason, those films are like just seem to suck the
What are the
soul.
underworld films? I don't know.
The ones with Kate Beckinsale as like what was she, a vampire or something, in like a trench coat and
Okay.
jumping around, and those films from a while back now, from like 20 years ago or something, or that Van Helsing movie from around that time, or it had the same level of just, I don't know, I just like a vacuum of something, and they weren't, not all the way through. It wasn't that they weren't that bad. But
Mm.
again, just that comparative thing of like, there's so much going on at the moment.
Mm.
Why am I not engaging? And to be honest, actually quite bored for like about 90% of the running
Yeah.
time for me was just
Well, I mean,
really, really
I
hard
just
going.
wouldn't usually watch a historical epic unless it had. And what are the grounds at which I'd? Well, this is one of the on the grounds at which I would watch a historical epic if I knew none of the history.
Right.
But
Yeah, I don't feel like even though we said it could potentially be a give a gateway drug because you go off and look up these things, but if you don't do that,
yeah,
it's a bit overwhelming if you don't already know this stuff, right?
yeah, yeah. It's kind of it's it seems like it's not got a Western audience in mind, which is no bad thing, but it's
no. But that in
kind of
I would, and again, I don't feel entirely qualified to say this, but if I had to guess and I had to speculate, my guess would be that even if this was history that I was somewhat more familiar with, so I had a little handhold or a foothold, I still don't think I would have enjoyed it that much more than that would be my guess. That it wasn't just that wasn't just the only problem with it for me. It's not my kind of it's not my kind of film, right?
Yeah, they were all really good looking and muscly and serious and
As
stuff.
are we.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, they're just too much like us.
Yeah, I think basically I'm pissed off because I lost out on the audition to Vic Graham.
Yeah.
Between me and him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to admit as well, I've only seen a few Vic Graham films, but I do quite like Vic Graham as a screen presence. He is very he's like one of those superstars you kind of understand why he's a superstar, right? He's got charisma.
Yeah, cheeky charisma. Yeah.
Yeah, I quite like him. He's a fun hero to follow. I didn't have a problem. Sometimes with these things, the problem is that you're being asked to follow like Tom Cruise or someone that you're not really interested in. But he's fine. I don't mind following him. He's fun to watch.
Yeah.
So what would we say about this one? I mean, again, I feel we're hedging our bets a little bit just because, and I don't think it's us being like timid about being down on this film. I think we're both coming from a place of, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are both genuinely a little bit out of our depth. But at the same time, instinctively, we probably wouldn't like this film even if we knew more about. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I can get more on board with a historical epic type thing, or I could definitely get more on board with them. I mean, but even so, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to compare, but is there anything that I was thinking, is because sometimes if you know the history, it felt like if you knew the history and you knew the characters, seeing them realized on screen would be gratifying, and we didn't have that, so I felt like there was that.
I agree with you,
and I wonder whether.
But I don't think this would be gratifying even if you did know I don't think it necessarily was done well.
I have no idea.
They felt very much like you said, they felt more like ciphers of a type rather than you could have replaced them. I'm not sure if they were representative of. Oh yes, that's the Raja the First I've always wanted to see, or I think they were just more. Well, let's just swap.
But isn't that just a case that is so long ago? Something like Oh, I guess I don't know, because you can visualize and put your own kind of take on a character, and
Yes,
they didn't seem like they had huge amounts of kind of complexity to them. So yeah,
right.
yeah,
But I know what you mean. I just because what you were going to say there, I feel you finished that thought halfway through. But you're right. Sometimes when it's the history is that ancient that the further back you go, it's like there's a certain lack of authenticity because you kind of you're not sure how people spoke or acted or whatever in those days. So they're replaced with more modern, like
yeah. But then I was thinking of someone like Nero or something. But then you think, well,
but even those like those epics. Yeah, you're quite right. It's the same thing, right? It's not as if they're acting in they act in they do historical epic acting, right? Rather than act like if you were going to set something in like I don't know 18th, 17th, 16th century, there's enough of a we've kind of got enough of a link a little bit that you can do like an authentic kind of gritty version of that history, but much further back and
yeah, but
to hang it on. So you just have to create. But you're
yeah,
right. You could do it a
yeah,
different way, but they never do for some
yeah, or
reason.
very rarely do. They tend to
Yeah.
just imbue these characters with sort of loftiness or whatever,
Well, they're myths, right?
regality or whatever, Caesar or
Yeah,
whatever. It's like, and you think, well, there is loads of space for interpretation because no one knows fucking anything. So why not be a
yeah,
bit more
yeah.
imaginative? And that's where I guess, regardless of you know what we
No, I know what you
knew,
mean. Like, rather than Richard Burton as Nero or something, give me like Toby Jones or someone, or just mix it up and have some.
yeah. Elijah Wood as
Yeah,
Nero. um,
something.
I think
Yeah,
that would be good. Possibly. Anyway, yeah. I mean, you could do or Steve Buscemi.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
could do anyway. And the
Like I
same
said, they
goes for
do that sometimes, but it's the default setting, and when they do it, it is automatically always more interesting as well, right?
yeah,
The default setting is predictable and slightly boring, which I guess is what, oddly enough, ironically, even though we don't know this history at all, it was still quite predictable considering we didn't.
yeah,
The overall arc was kind.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny that because um, that the death of the elder brother did happen in mysterious circumstances in real history.
Spoiler
But
alert.
you could, yeah, but sorry. Well, I mean, but you could see it coming anyway, even though we didn't know, because he was sort of like he was foreshadowing it constantly. He was, I'm so stressed out, I'm gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
You're gonna die so bad.
It was almost like God, I hope I don't die a horrible death today. Like,
Yeah, he kept foreshadowing it. Anyway, yeah, I mean, like I say, kind of, there's definitely aspects I enjoyed, but yeah,
it would take me a long time, I think, if I was ever one day for whatever reason after doing further reading or just becoming older and wiser and somehow learning this history and then it might and I might try watching that again. I think it would have to be a good few years in the future before I attempt
yeah.
this again.
Well, again, though, that kind of history though is like the sort of the deaths of kings and queens and etc. is not necessarily the kind of history I'm that I mean, for example, they were the regality was so over, like, the nobleness of the kings and queens
Right.
was
There was
so
no
kind of,
common
yeah,
in it, really.
and
Yeah.
and the worship of these kings and queens. And yes, I mean, Raja, when you look at the history, okay, he instigated a lot of kind of civilized stuff and so, but I mean, that's not the kind of history I'm into. Is uprisings, and I'm more on the rebels side, and these rebels were kind of
Right. I think what you want is you want a film all about the people who made those crowns
yeah,
and how they were made.
yeah. I do. I would like
It might
that.
be. You never know. Actually, if you check the Blu-ray releases of Ponniyin, Selvan, or something, there might be like a extra, like making of little featurette about how they made those crowns, and I'm sure you'd find that of more interest. Maybe the main feature.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll release a 3D printable file. That would be good. Because I mean, fucking forget all the kind of Mandalorian helmets and all the rest of it. If I could get my hands on one of those, that would be.
Ponniyin, Selvan.
I think I'd wear it everywhere.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so next time on day release, look out for Robin wearing his new Ponniyin Selvan crown.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't have it. Yeah.
I think we've kind of danced around it long enough, haven't we? We gave it our best shot. Sorry about that, lads. Right. So onward then.
Yeah. Sparta.
And so we're kind of doing a bit of catching up with. So in an earlier episode, we spoke of Rimini and Richie Bravo.
Yeah.
So this is Ulrich Seidel's companion. Apparently, it was going to be one long film.
Yeah.
And then they decided to separate it out into, which is probably a good idea. I think. I don't know if this would work. Kind of if you went back and forth between, I don't know if that would really work, would it?
Well, I see what you mean. Interwoven between the two of them.
I think that was the original plan.
Because he did do that. He did do that one edit for film festival, didn't he? I don't know if you read that. Yeah, there's one film festival I think where he did that.
And there's so this is the companion piece. The main character, as played by George Friedrich, is the brother of Richie Bravo, and it's interesting because in Rimini we did see him very briefly, right at the very beginning. There's no Richie Bravo in this
Richie Bravo, no.
There's a few. I don't know if they were cheeky like winks or something. There's a few bits where our main character goes into like a pub or some space where someone's doing a similarly kind of crap karaoke performance.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell whether he was singing a Richie Bravo song. I thought, oh, is he singing a Richie Bravo? And I thought, actually, maybe it sounded more like it was a kind of nationalistic German song of some kind, or it seemed like it was a German bar, but I had no idea. Yeah.
Right. Well, again, slightly like Rimini, this is kind of, even though the main characters are Austrian, it's mostly set elsewhere, right? So
set in Transylvania,
and this one is Transylvania, yeah. So our main character, George Friedrich, is basically having kind of trouble consummating with his Romanian girlfriend, right? He's just not really into her at all, right?
She's very attractive and completely on fire. I mean, she's like wants to have sex with him so badly, and he's not. He can't get it up, or is not interested.
Which is either, and this is the kind of interesting thing we'll talk about a little bit in a while. Is it because he's actually almost asexual in that kind of Michael Jackson Peter Pan complex way, or is it he wants to fuck little boys?
Well,
it's one or the other, isn't it?
yeah,
Like,
I'm not sure which one Michael Jackson was either, or Peter Pan, but
oh no, we're gonna get
lawyers.
hate mail from Peter Pan fanatics.
Yeah.
Yeah, forget about pedo Pan there for a minute.
Yeah, it's I think. Oh well. Oh no, carry on. What we
Anyway, so yeah,
plot.
basically what happens is he kind of with the cover of the father Hans Michael Reberg, in his last role he died, who's kind of losing his marbles in a old folks home, and he's kind of resorted to singing these old kind of.
He's a former Nazi.
Yeah, and we also saw him in Rimini as well,
doing roughly the same thing.
But he kind of provides the cover a little bit, so our main character can say, "Oh, I have to go and see my father. You know, he's dying, blah blah blah." But turns out, instead of going to see his father, which he does a little bit, but instead of going back to Austria to see his father, he goes to some kind of, I guess, economically deprived village somewhere in Transylvania, and there's an old abandoned school, I guess, that isn't being used anymore, and he kind of, well, he doesn't really refurbish it exactly, but he just kind of rents
Gives
the space,
it a lick of paint.
Yeah, and then offers free judo classes to the young boys in the area, and and the film's basically, because it's very kind of very kind of docudrama style, right? Basically watching him clearly struggling with feelings that he is having towards these boys, whether that's just a feeling of he doesn't want to grow up and he just want to hang out with little boys, or something a little bit more dodgy.
I think it's definitely on the dodgy side.
I think it is way more to the dodgy side.
More to it. But we should mention that like before the judo school, first of all, he's looking for a school to turn into a judo school. It's quite a, he's quite a driven thing. He finds a school first, and then the other thing is that, because I saw a couple of reviews that seem to, with the controversy which we'll probably go into, that seem to get the plot wrong, which was that he clearly, he's not someone who sets up a judo school and then has finds himself attracted to kids.
Right. No. It's from the beginning. It's
from the very beginning. So you've got these absolutely fucking horrendously toe-curlingly excruciating bits. And again, the reviews, what I read, anyway, got them wrong. He didn't happen to be parked up where and find a snowball fight. He went looking for he's stalking kids, and he's stalking the boat. That's what he's doing. He's not fucking
hanging around parks.
Just stop it, and it's absolutely fucking toe-curlingly. It's almost impossible to watch
because he's so soft-spoken as well. The character, like, he doesn't seem aggressive in any way. In fact, he's even kind of quite, like, he's not one for confrontation, right? So I think that's the problem is, and because there's no like one specific kind of scene where he actually rapes or abuses or molests anyone, right? So there's no like exclamation point on it, right? So I think that's led to some people being a little bit confused as to, like, they don't necessarily think of him as a predator, but but he is.
Yeah.
He is from the beginning. But
Yeah, I mean,
he's a very confused
well,
kind of predator, right? He's like, he doesn't
yeah.
quite know how to make his dreams come true, I guess.
Well, I guess if you marry the kind of the usual the trope of a kind of sad guy who can't get a girlfriend, kind of or incel type character
Right.
in indie films often, or
Mm.
who with someone who's into who's a paedophile. That's him. He's a he has a morality and he knows it's wrong and he can't commit the act. That's the difference, though. But you I don't think it's the case that you shouldn't see it as if the opportunity presented itself. That's how it comes across. If the opportunity presented itself, he would take
Right.
advantage of it. So he wants the opportunity to present itself, and he's trying to create the circumstances where it's just laid on a plate, a bit like a kind of incel type, whatever, loser kind of guy in any film. So it's not like. So he's still that still makes him a predator. Like
I know what you mean, but it's kind of, it's a ludicrous conceit in a way that if I'm just in the right place at the right time, that a little boy is going to make a pass at me and make it clear that he wants me to fondle his genitals or whatever, right? And of course that happens.
But the film is always drawing you closer and closer to that point, though. With the sort of the child who becomes the central character, who's like, I don't know, who's I don't know if you can even say this, because it's like all this legal stuff around it, isn't it? But it's like when the when are we going to go into the controversy to do with the film, the Spiegel article and all that?
Yeah, well, we can do that. I just probably we should mention as well that there's also another kind of important character is so one of the, because the thing is, a lot of these boys running around as well, like they don't seem to have like parental figures. Certainly a lot of absent fathers, right? But one guy turns up, right, and he's kind of very aggressively, what are you doing here? What are you, and from the beginning, he's kind of got his number, right? Like he knows there's something a bit dodgy about this guy.
Yeah, but there's obviously something dodgy about him as well, though.
Yes, I think so. That's why he can see it, I think. That's why he can see it in him. And he's no age, he's not the world's greatest dad either, is he? But and eventually he kind of rallies some of the other people around, and there's
the other dads. It's a dad's army, isn't it?
And there's almost a lynching, but the film never really culminated. The film just kind of, like a lot of like Rimini did to a certain point, just kind of peters out and allows you to make your own kind of conclusion.
It comes full circle in a way, doesn't it? Because he's just then. It's just, well, I don't want to leave the. Actually, I'm not gonna. I don't know. Just spoiler the end. But but I mean that scene with all those dads. They were all, a lot of them were drunk. According to, I think.
So the Spiegel article basically, I mean, there's a lot of different ins and outs, but basically kind of accuse Ulrich Seidel of irresponsibility and just like in that scene, for example, giving alcohol to people who they knew to have
drinking problems,
problems, and let them slap the kids around, and also apparently deliberately chose kids from broken backgrounds who would have like emotional reactions on screen.
Yeah,
And
or that particular area anyway is
yeah,
known for sort of those that kind of trouble, that kind
yeah.
of difficulty.
Well, I mean, obviously we're not saying that, but I don't know where that place where they found it, or yeah, but if what we're saying on screen looks, it doesn't look like a place you could have set designed to look like that, right? It does look like a bit of a fucked up place to grow up, doesn't it? But of course, on the other hand, other people who Seidel himself and other people who work for him have claimed that was all bollocks, and the people who reported it were they didn't see the full picture and they didn't understand, and they were just taking things out of context. And I don't know, where do you
well, I've been wavering in the last 2 days. I mean, my gut reaction well, it's weird, isn't it? Because on the one hand you have journalists who are fucking liars all the time, and then you have filmmakers who are
apologies to any journalists watching,
fucking liars as well a lot of the time. I've been on films, and you can see how the kind of the weight of the director gets filtered down. Spread.
I certainly agree with you. It's definitely the accusations, and then when you see the film as well, like some of those scenes do seem very real. The accusations are definitely believable.
Yeah, they ring true. That's the problem. But
but whether they are, that's kind of a different matter, right? I mean,
sorry.
So your instinct tells you that they are true.
No, it's not just that. It's the fact that it's kind of like the thing that irritates me, regardless of whether it's true or not, is sort of like is the poverty porn aspect of it, like the the idea that that somehow it's kind of because as far as I know, they weren't at these kids weren't at the premiere. Seidel went back to Romania. He did.
Right.
So he said, quote, this his remarks. I realise I should have kept them more in the loop when, this isn't a direct quote, but I should have kept in touch with them after the film more.
Right. Yeah. He said he was to show them the film, and they all,
they enjoyed it.
Yeah, enjoyed it or whatever.
Yeah, but if you think about,
kids would, if you showed any kids any film they were in like that, of course they'd have a great.
There's me getting my house slapped. But yeah, it's like it really kind of that aspect of him not even giving them a second thought. Maybe I don't even think he realizes that makes the other accusations ring truer. Because he didn't give them and some of the stuff he says in rebuttal, on the Wikipedia page, I think I reeled back towards him, but like I say, in film, so many, and the way he films as well, with this kind of almost like just a few people on set and stuff, it makes it really vulnerable to those confusing conditions. And then there's some certain things he skirted around, like some caveats, the parents and guardians were always on set when we were filming outside or whatever. It's like, hang on a second, what about the...
Yeah, well, he was saying that as well, that he was like, he set it up so everyone should have thought that they were on screen all the time. So obviously that leads to them sometimes not knowing when they were on screen. And,
and also just, but because some people are saying, the real controversial scene is the one where where the kids were being attacked by the adults. But to me, the really controversial scene, the scene where he's naked in the shower with the kids, sort of thing. Yeah, that's pretty.
That's interesting. I had the opposite.
Because he's slapping about and they're in their wet pants and all this, and it's like,
yeah,
it's just, you know, if they didn't know what they were doing, they're not gonna look back at that and go, like as they grow older and stuff. Oh, I wasn't exploited. I knew exactly. You know, they had to know the context of what was they were in, or they had to have some understanding of it. Otherwise, as they grow up, because it's you know, it's quite a way. It's otherwise it's exploitation, really. That's the way I sort of see it.
Yeah, I don't know, because I wasn't thinking in terms of them going back to the film. I was just thinking just in terms of that scene and what's happening in that scene. It is just a naked man and a boy in the same room, which
in the shower, yeah,
in the shower, which is something you see all the time in like hot springs and stuff here, right? Like you see a lot of adults, naked adults with naked kids, and so it's just in and of itself. I don't see that as.
Well, about the slapping around and the you know, rolling about. The bit where he's in the shower with lots of them and he's naked. He's kind of slapping them about and stuff.
Well, again, I think from a kid's point of view, if they're not thinking of it as sexual, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, that's where the line is crossed, because it is, and then that's where the line. That's where he seems to have basically bamboozled people by saying, okay, he definitely didn't tell them that was a sort of sexual, that had sexual connotations, right? But they're, you know, it does, and
no, it does, but it's sexual connotations for the character, right? It's not.
Yeah, but it's
not the actor. It's not as if they. It's not like.
Yes, it definitely it's like it's all, you know, kind of. These are the things that I struggle with. It all treads a really fine line between what would be acceptable and what would not be acceptable. You know, and it
also
goes
depending on geographic. I mean,
exactly, right to the edge. And he chose a place where like no one could have any say whatsoever anyway. Right. No one had any no. You know, it wouldn't matter what the fuck they, you know, they complained to Spiegel, and then he's saying, and then the other thing was, you know, the interviewer, he was saying that you know, it nearly destroyed his career, and it's like, but in a response article, and he didn't, and this is for just after the Toronto Film Festival, and he didn't address any of the points, like within that. He just, the Austrian Film Council looked into it and we were cleared of all charges. Like, well, you know, but he has addressed them separately, you know, in other places. So it sort of reassures me. But to me, it nags away at me the sort of voicelessness of poor people, you know. And
I see what you mean. Like, if what you're saying is right, and you told everyone everything, and everyone knew what they were doing and everything, then why couldn't you have done this in Austria?
Yeah, or at the very least, like, it's the idea that, you know, you go and do this thing and then you abandon them to their fate, sort of thing. Like, you know, it's too, like, it's. I was just saying, like, for example, imagine you did this in Britain, this film, you know, the fucking Daily Mail would be, like, he wouldn't have a career. He'd be like, it would be destroyed, you know. So I
think the issues you're bringing up as well are quite interesting. I think another reason, I think it's got something to do with the timing as well, right? Because if you think about it, if you go back a few decades, I mean, this sort of filmmaking where you went somewhere else where you could film stuff that you couldn't, and then you ran off to your film festival and got accolades, and the people you put in your film are totally forgotten or whatever. That would have been fairly standard and controversial, right? But you're quite right. You don't often see this kind of film, that approach nowadays, right? So I think Sparta sticks out a little bit because
It does,
people are in general a bit more
but I don't know to what
concerned
extent
about that kind of thing
the
nowadays.
the issue of paedophilia. I mean, obviously, it's become more and more, pronounced and
But I think even if you
touch
take
paper,
if you
whatever you
take the
call it.
paedophilia out of it for now, I'm
Yeah.
just in terms of you were saying the poverty porn thing or going somewhere and
Yeah,
kind of exposing people. Like, I don't think that would have been necessarily an issue for so many people back in the day, but people don't operate like that nowadays, right? So it's unusual to see this kind of, like, even like really well respected filmmakers, you could argue that someone like Werner Herzog or someone like that, right? Some of their films were going to a place, capturing something, using the local people for cheap labor and kind of on-screen spectacle, and then you fuck off and pick up your prize in Berlin or something and never go back and address those people or anything like that, right? But people didn't necessarily mind that then. We're much more conscious of it now.
I wanted to say one more thing. It was just that it's the fact that we're talking about it so much, and then lots of people, it generates lots of. He's definitely he's a kind of a controversialist, or whatever he calls controversy, and makes people think about difficult things, that you wouldn't necessarily want to think about, or
He's a provocateur for sure.
Exactly. So he knows exactly what he's doing, and just with regards to the sort of the poverty porn aspect. So, in the hot potato paedophilia issue, it's just these kids are thrown into a kind of minefield that if they weren't fully kind of because what did you see the sort of what it said, what the because I don't think this is disputed. This is the thing. So the reason why it got okayed by the Austrian Film Board, it seems that it didn't break any rules, and it's sort of like, it was because it treads this line that right to the edge of, and didn't do anything bad to those kids or anything.
So you're saying it's not necessarily it's legal, but irresponsible
and probably unethical. If he didn't, he claims they had the full cassette, but the thing of saying the casting call thing, saying it was about I haven't got it in front of me, but it was about did you read that? About it says it's about a man who
feels who likes hanging around with children or something
and feels romantically attached.
Something. It was like it wasn't a full on.
Doesn't say who's a paedophile who can't who is too moral to want to be a paedophile. So therefore, this is
interesting though, because I suppose it depends on your interpretation of the finished film. I don't necessarily think that's a dishonest claim. I think the film is about that.
All right, now hang on. Okay, if you wanted to do a casting call so that people were under no illusions on this particular film, you're saying that roughly that same thing, but then include, and obviously if they omitted it from the Der Spiegel article, and fine, but the film deals with issues of paedophilia, right? Don't shy away from using it. But he said himself, I didn't use the word paedophile because I didn't want the the children to get spooked or whatever it was, or sort of to get but it's like, well, again, the film does deal with it. It completely and utterly does.
I mean, what's the other way though? I mean, like in terms of the children, like I think what you tell the parents and what you tell the children is also
but it doesn't seem like he did tell the parents. It was a film about. It seems like he chose his words carefully, so that they would be on board, but they would have enough information so that they couldn't legally claim that they didn't know what it was about, when actually if he didn't use, so it's legally it's fine, but morally and
Is
ethically
it difficult, right?
it's not.
No,
And
I
that's what
understand.
I can't help thinking, that nothing that he said has sort of like really made me think. There's some stuff that's
Oh,
sort of reeled it
you've
back.
frozen there.
Oh, have I? Yeah, there's some stuff that's reeled
You're
back
back now.
my kind of sort of initial reaction, but
Right. Which it's supposed to be as well, right? It's obviously it's supposed to get your hackles up, right? And I suppose the argument is does the end justify the means or not, right? And I suppose the other thing as well is I haven't, in all the things I read about it, I didn't hear any specific complaints from the actual parents of the kids who were in the film, right? Now that doesn't mean,
well, the Der Spiegel article claims it does.
really? The way I heard it, it was more on-set people or people visiting the set who
No,
claimed on behalf of maybe people who they thought weren't empowered enough to
I thought that
complain
was
themselves.
later on in the article. I thought in the beginning it was quite. It seemed obvious to me that it was about it was from the parents of the kid who was in the shower with him. Who was
You
forced
could be
to drink
right.
the alcohol. If I'm wrong, then
But I suppose because the other way, well, imagine you do it. Imagine if you were going to be totally. That's the other. Because if you're going to tell this story anyway, right? You're like, well, I mean, the kids seeing the film when they're older, when they're growing up, and that strikes me as that's more a job of the parents kind of explaining it to them as they get older, and when they want to see that, where that film I was in when I was a kid, what's all that about? I want to see that or whatever. That's almost I think that's out of the filmmaker's hands to a certain extent, right? That's kind of up to the parents to deal with that, right? But because if you're going to make this kind of film, right? I mean, I can't. What is the best way to do it? To do it this way, where the kids kind of aren't told what the theme of, which they may not understand, or is it better to tell your child actors, okay, this is a film about a man who wants to fuck children like you? Like, is that even something that wouldn't that be worse? Wouldn't that be more traumatic?
Well, it's
children's imaginations are very active, so they might actually start feeling more.
Well, the accusation is that the parents didn't know fully, and then he says the parents did know fully. So and there's some documents that that sort of that back up his claims. But I don't know in what way. But it's just that I guess there's it's the aftermath of kind of. Well, the thing that really, like I say, kind of still sticks in my craw, I guess, is just it's the sort of intellectual film going audience kind of, like you just said, do the ends justify the means? Well, the kind of the poverty porn aspect of it, where it's like, well, it's so powerful that it's kind of like and it really makes you think. Well, it really makes you think about and it does really it's just a film, and it doesn't make any of these people change their mind or do anything.
No.
In the fucking world whatsoever.
It's
a piece of entertainment.
It's going to make someone wearing a beret in an art house think about it for an hour and a half, and then maybe 30 minutes later when they discuss it over a coffee with their friend or something. But beyond that,
Yeah, so it's always a case of like that idea that, oh well, yeah, but it's such a powerful piece, or it's kind of because there are deeper questions within the film about about sexuality in general, right? And in life in general, there are questions about sexuality and how like for example the obvious moral question of I don't think, did he didn't do something like this, did he? But there's a book that's that Claire was saying based on this, because I was saying this in the car about if I think with regards to this film in a way, before we watched it,
with you, by the way?
huh?
Did she watch it with you, by the way?
Yeah, she did.
Okay. I was wondering if she had anything, if her opinions aligned with yours.
She's more aligned with mine and more kind of like, I don't know, because it's really recent. Yeah, very suspicious. Yeah, but it's like if it's like that conundrum. Would it be ethical if now we're entering this era of kind of sex dolls and stuff? Is it ethical to sell, child sex dolls? Because it's like, which one's better? Like having if the moral question is if you legalized or whatever, I don't know, I don't know if it's a legal issue at the moment or not, but if you legalized child sex dolls and that stopped paedophilia overnight, would that be okay? And it's a not an.
I think that's a no-brainer, yes, isn't it?
Well, you would hope so, but I don't imagine like the Daily Mail would be happy with sales of, sex dolls, child sex dolls, like because it's sort of like those are moral conundrums that kind of explore the complexity of the idea of sexuality versus the reality of it. Like really genuinely not having sex with a child if you're having a sex with a child's a sex doll that looks like a child.
Yeah, well, I think the problem with someone like that, with a Daily Mail reader who would have a problem with that, their problem, and I understand it,
sorry.
Their problem is basically the idea of someone wanting to have a sex with a child disgusts them, right? And I get that.
Yeah.
But that's a very head in the sand attitude that pretends it doesn't exist. It exists, right? So
yeah. So
as much disgust it as you like, but it's a real thing, right? It's a real, I don't know what you'd call it, a condition or people have it and they want to have kids. And if you bring out a bunch of dolls with enough variety and diversity of ages and body types and the rate of child abuse dropped, if there was any way you could measure that, then clearly for any rational minded person that would be a good thing, right?
Yeah, well, but the counter argument would definitely be that you're encouraging it.
You're normalizing it.
You're normalizing it and encouraging it, aren't you? And even if that,
which I don't
weren't the case, because it so look at it this way. So you'd be normalizing it and encouraging it, and so what those reporters would do would be then start looking at this increase in sales, and then saying the one which would then extrapolated means that there's loads more paedophiles where there were fewer paedophiles before, sort of thing. So the threat is bigger, despite the fact that the actual.
Yeah, I don't buy that argument at all, because the line, and I don't know where it is. There's just a line in most people where you get, some people might like younger stuff, right? And they might sometimes get into trouble because they might go, 15 or something like that, but they generally stay post-pubescent, let's say, right? But there's a line that 95% of people, when they see a child, they just don't see a child sexually in any way, shape, or form. And I don't think you can encourage that in people. Like, no, it's fine. You got these. I don't think people are going to develop a taste for really young kids.
One interesting thing Claire pointed out was just is it called Sparta? Because they've got this Sparta thing, but also the Spartans, the Romans, those cultures were notoriously paedophilic,
the
weren't
Spartans, and Sparta as well. The other one is the thing about Sparta is they're famous. They left their kids out on cliff tops and stuff, right, to see if they survived. And
But,
well, so let's back off from the controversy a little.
Okay.
I know what you mean about the suspicion, and I think one of the reasons we're slightly suspicious as well. If we'd have just seen this film in isolation, maybe, but you've seen Rimini as well, right? And I've seen some other Illucidal films, and he's definitely, I mean, he's definitely someone who's not averse to poking his camera into the gutter, right? And like and Rimini is a tame example, really, but he's clearly kind of, there's a slight relish in showing kind of human debris or kind of the people on on the slightly, I don't know, I think he likes to look at marginal characters, right, and not necessarily in a sympathetic way either, right? Like, he's not afraid of showing warts and all. So I think that, because we know his game a little bit from other films, that makes sense. But we'll circle back around to it, I think. So, controversy aside for the moment, what do you think of this? Do you think this film works? Do you think this is a good film? Do you think this is interesting? Like, what do you make of the?
Well, like I was saying, with regards to the kind of the sex doll thing and the issue of sexuality, I really think it. Well, if there were no controversy, then I definitely would have watched it differently. But I knew about it before I watched it, so it was hard to,
it's difficult to separate the film from the
kind of spoil
controversy.
a bit, yeah. But it's also just I'm not sure. Like I say, the thing that grates on me is the is the idea of these sort of can audiences and stuff, going, it's so profound, and it's actually doesn't really take you into the kind of
I agree with you.
most profound aspects of human sexuality and the moral conundrums. Really, he's got a morality and he can't cope with it, and it's not that. It's quite straightforward, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, while on the one hand I appreciate a film that is kind of non-judgmental, where they just kind of present something, but the thing is, it doesn't really have that much to say, and I don't mean in a polemical way, but it's just it doesn't. It's odd, because I've thought about the film a lot since I've watched it.
Well, when did you watch it? I only watched it today.
Oh, I watched it like a week ago or something. But still, I don't really think about much things beyond after I've seen them, right? But it's still, it's which is usually a good sign that I'm thinking about something that is. But I know what you mean. I don't know if I necessarily learned it. No, not learned it. I don't know if I kind of. I don't know what my takeaway from it is, really, other than it's tough to be a pedo. I know it's just,
you don't want to be.
It's and also the other thing as well, I think, is how can I put it? Even though he would argue, well, I'm just presenting a situation, I'm not non-judgmental. But the thing is, it's not a documentary where you've captured something that you've created this world. You've created the story of the man going to Austria to this, economically deprived place in Transylvania. So it's not as if you're just turning your camera on something that already exists. Look at this thing that exists, and you make your own mind up.
No,
you created this world. This world only exists because you made it, right? So
So
in that case, you expect there to be a little something. I don't know. It's an odd. I'm not quite sure. I mean, Rimini, in comparison with Rimini seemed to be a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, I didn't think Rimini was brilliant either, but Rimini seemed to me to have a little bit more of a
point.
yeah,
You wanna
a
say
little bit,
point?
a little bit
Kind of.
more of a point.
It,
Whereas Sparta, I don't know. Again, though, I have thought about it, and in terms of filmmaking, I think some of it's actually really quite well done. Like, it does definitely have. There's like a few bits that like are genuinely funny, like when he starts hanging out with the kids and they start making, and then you have that cut to him spinning around in the car doing the drift thing, and all the kids are like. I thought that was actually, yeah, that was quite insight. Like, that's exactly the kind of thing you would do to get those kids on your side, right? They'd love that.
yeah.
That kind of like, if you're going to take it seriously as kind of like a character study or how you would go about doing it, I think in some ways it's really well done, but
Yeah.
I'm still not exactly sure why he was so inspired to tell this story. And I don't mean it in a way, oh, why dwell on something horrible? Why tell a story about it? I don't mean that. I just mean, why this version of this story?
I think it's sort of like warrants, warrants thinking about, but maybe that I don't know, but also just it's it's just so toe-curlingly awkward. That that is that
As
the only
intended.
is that her, but I just end up thinking, is that the only point of it? Almost.
Well, it could be
There's slightly more to it, but is there much more? Sometimes you just
right.
because the only reason I'm saying that is because obviously the controversy around it is going to be a guarantee because it's about paedophilia, and then him doing these sort of really awkward sort of, it's almost like a Viz character, at times, like paedophile Pete, and
right.
It's kind of like he's I
can imagine the opening, Peter Pete and him in the corner with the I love me some kids.
Yeah, or like Kiddie Diddler. I'm sure I could think. Or what's Desperate Diddler. Anyway, it's sort of like, yeah, these all these setups, and they're just like, no, damn, still.
Oh, yeah. See, that would be funny. Yeah. I would quite like to see that. Would be controversial.
It would, but it was a bit like that, and the build.
It reminds me. I had an idea for a short film actually. I have a friend of mine who's extremely kind of, he's a dirty old man, but he's also like really, really, he's quite mean with his money and stuff. And I thought it would be quite funny. You could do a short film called The Frugal Rapist, and he keeps getting like the rope he's been used it too many times, and it frays and breaks, and the girl runs away, and it's damn.
It's a bit like awesome. Is it Maniac Driver? That sounds like a little bit, but yeah, that sounds like an awful but good film.
I can't mention it to but the thing is as well, so the awkward thing, so this is quite interesting, right? Because I think of this, sometimes this kind of film, and many of Ulrich Seidel's films actually do fall into this category for me, where it is very much just like, look at this. And then you do one, and you think about it afterwards, and I do wonder, like, well, is that actually? It depends what, because become so used to expecting certain things from cinema, right? I'm wondering if sometimes just look at that. That's kind of. I mean, that is. I mean, why is that not? That's relevant, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with seeing a film that just does that every now. You might not want to live on a diet of it, but like so for instance, you were saying the toe curling awkwardness thing, right? Like, so it's a different kind of toe curling. But let's say you do the toe curling awkward comedy of like The Office or Alan Partridge or something like that, right? And of course there's darker versions that would maybe go more towards this territory. Now, the saving grace there is, as well as being awkward, it's funny or it's satirical, right, or something like that. But just if you remove that and it's just toe curling, does that make it less valid? I think the film has validity, but I'm trying to imagine, like, if there wasn't a controversy, like, I don't want to be counterfactual, but if there wasn't a controversy about the film, do you think you'd be less suspicious of its motives, or do you think you'd still kind of have a problem with why is this wallowing in this kind of
I guess
thing
it's just
for no reason?
I guess, like, well, I mean, there's the circumstances of him going to this poor area and choosing poor kids and stuff like that who are already in a precarious circumstances, as if that's more real. I don't. Like you say, I can see that does give more authenticity than, say, if he chose the next Haley Joel Osment and whatever, to be in the next sort of method child, Asa Butterfield, Haley Joel Osment, and
Right.
I can't think of any actual kids who are kids still. Elijah Wood.
You're right.
Yeah, pretty good.
I didn't realize you carried such a torch for Elijah Wood.
Anyway, yeah.
Do you want to hear my impression of Elijah Wood in Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I do both of them. This is to me what the Lord of the Rings trilogy sounded like. Oh no! Oh Frodo! Frodo! Oh Frodo! Oh Sam! Oh Sam! Oh, here you go, Frodo! Frodo! Oh Sam! There we go. That's it.
Very good.
And then explosions and orcs and things. But wasn't it like that?
I could see that. Like, the ring dropped on the floor. He picked it up. Oh, Frodo! Oh, Sam, Frankie, Sam. Oh no, it dropped there again. Oh. Don't worry about it, Sam. We'll get it back. Oh no, I'll try and get it for you.
Oh, Sam, you're such a comfort, Sam. Oh, Frodo, he's so right. See, that is it. It's just put that on repeat for 9 hours, and it's the same experience.
Yeah, that's a film. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I didn't enjoy that level of toe curlingness. I hated it when he was.
Well, here's another
especially
element.
Hated it when he went on the fucking swing next to the kid, and I was like.
Also, you have children as well. I think, which might you have children.
Yes,
as well,
I have children.
Yeah, I don't. But so here's another element. I mean, I've been playing devil's advocate a little bit, but there's another element of the film which leads me more over to your side a little bit of him just kind of dwelling in the gutter for no good reason thing. And I think this was a problem with both Sparta and Rimini, is basically the inclusion of the father character, right? Like, so both Rimini and Sparta, to my mind, would work exactly the same way without the character of the dying old man in the old folks home, right? Like, that brings nothing, I don't think, except an extra layer of fucking depressing, right?
Yeah.
And like the way the film ends with the old man confused singing some old Nazi song and then crying and looking back in his life, and it's just a total downer, right? And I'm not saying I don't have a problem with that, but it's just like, why have you added this? Like, I don't understand what the old man character in relation to his sons.
Yeah, what is there a deliberate
Yeah.
juxtaposition?
Does that make more sense to you than to me?
No,
Because to me,
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could.
gratuitous. That seemed gratuitous. If you're talking about gratuitous, like miserablest art house stuff, that seemed more gratuitous to me in a way.
Like again, an interview is not about that particular issue, but one of the fawning journalists wrote some question like, "Oh, I see it as blah blah blah." You know, I can't remember what he said. So, I mean, it is the kind of thing you think, oh yeah, and Ulrich Siedel's response was, "Oh, you can see it like that if you want." So, why are you being such a dick? He's got his own interpretation of it. You can talk about it. You don't just, yeah, if you want to see it like that, like twat. Anyway,
that's a hell of an Austrian accent you're doing.
I know, it's incredible, isn't it?
And then Ulrich said, he said, "See, Jimmy, you can think any you want about that."
You can. I can't do it anymore. Scott, Hollis is my son's kept trying to get me to do a Scottish accent. That's why, and then I've lost it.
I'm doing, Robin.
Oh yeah, you were doing Austrian, yeah, an Austrian accent. Yeah. Anyway, he, so he seems to be one of these, a bit like Herzog again, where it's like, you can interpret your film however you want. And it's like, I don't put anything in this film. In fact, I don't even make it. I don't, it's all just there. Just
to come to this conclusion after seeing my film is the very height of idiocy.
Yeah.
I cannot think of anything more stupid in the history of mankind.
You're not even paraphrasing him there. Didn't he actually say that to someone? It was the guy.
I'm not having a go at Herzog, but no. He's just fun to do, isn't he? Because he's just so, like, when he has a great roundabout way of like of insulting someone, whereas it sounds as if he's like actually giving the benefit of the doubt, right? Like,
yeah.
Yes, I suppose if you were a monumental fool, you could maybe reach this conclusion.
Yeah, he's like what's the Viz character who the one that the pugilist one, the posh what's his name? Not Raffles. Is it Raffles?
I don't know. Is that more recent? I haven't read it.
No, 8 years ago. I haven't read it for years. No. You know the posh guy who always tries to start a fight. Is it Raffles or something? Interesting that you would say that, and perhaps you would like me to digest this information by punching you repeatedly in the face.
I don't remember that character at all.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's Werner Herzog. He probably wrote it, didn't he? No.
Not a bad idea, actually, to do on our sister YouTube comics podcast. I wouldn't mind doing like a best of Viz, actually.
Yeah, it's probably quite hard to get hold of them.
Get you on as a guest.
Oh, you might know of a way of getting hold of them. Anyway, yeah, I'm done with that. Yeah, I guess without controversy aside, I probably could have enjoyed it a bit, but the toe curlingness I found, it was almost a relief when he then went off looking for a judo. So I thought, at least like you've got a project and they're going to be on board a little bit more. But he was just going into invading kids' spaces in the most awful, like
Yeah.
brazen way, and it was so fucking uncomfortable. It's like, oh, that I just
Not to say, by the way, we did forget to mention this. I think we probably should mention it. George Friedrich's performance is pretty fucking good. Like,
yeah,
assuming he's not just playing himself, because I don't know him. But he's pretty fucking convincing, right, throughout this film. At no point did I see the mask slip. Like, and to be fair to him, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna affect him in the future. It's a pretty brave role to play this
you
convincingly.
definitely
Right?
don't want to get typecast.
No, he don't want to be. Yeah. Sparta 2,
Yeah.
pedo harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there we go. So, well, do you think you'll be seeking out any other Ulrich Seidel films?
Yeah, I do. I mean,
just turn you off
I do
now,
quite
or?
like the aspect of it being like a documentary, but fictionalized. So therefore, it's a perfectly constructed documentary. You never
Right.
miss the bit. There's not like
Yeah,
we
it gives
turned
you
up
the
outside
illusion of-
such and such's house and he
Yeah.
wasn't there. Or whatever. You
It
see all
does
the.
feel. It does feel massively authentic, which again feeds into the controversy, right? Because it's very difficult to imagine it being fabricated in a way.
Yeah, so I like that conception of his. I like that idea. But
it's interesting. In the few reviews I read that didn't like it much, almost all of them cited of his earlier films. They cited the Paradise trilogy. They were like, "Oh no, this is the peak of." And I've never actually seen the Paradise trilogy. I've seen another couple of his things like Dog Days, and but so I might check out Paradise trilogy just to see what Ulrich Seidel like at his very best might be.
Yeah,
like.
I saw that and I thought the same thing. Like maybe I need to check them out. It's just I don't know. Does it always have to be a requirement that you have to build up your energy levels before you build up your resilience? Make sure you've had a good meal. Make sure you're not feeling queasy. Some of these things. Like make sure I don't not liable to get cramp in my leg from curling my toes. Just yeah.
It's interesting. It's quite interesting to me that those. I mean, I know what you mean. Those scenes are obviously designed to be very, very cringeworthy. But I'm surprised as to the extent that they worked for you, because they worked for me like generally as I go. But you seem to have like really been hit by them. Again, I wonder if just being a parent maybe makes a difference.
It's partly being a parent. It's just it's the awkwardness of it. It's like it's the way the kids are so on board with everything and innocent and stuff. That really kind of and he's sort of like, because I think I'm a bit of a kind of like like kind of what's the word, like a child at heart, sort of thing. So like I can picture myself doing something similar, but not for the same reasons. And so it's horrible to watch, because it's sort of like it's
you could imagine someone thinking of you in that way or something.
Yeah, well there's that, or there's or like the idea that like a parent is going to come out and go. Not that I don't do that. I mean, it is weird, obviously, to hang around a playground and and be like, oh, can I play with you? But it's I am kind of more innocently childlike than sort of and a bit more naive, I guess, than kind of your average person, maybe. So I do feel like I could, so I just could I don't know. It felt like it could be something that the awkwardness of somebody thinking,
Right.
you know,
Right.
that was
I know what
me,
you
or
mean.
you
I
know,
know what
like
you're
sort of
saying.
that interaction, between my own perception of myself and the obvious perception of him, and how
Right.
he was clear what he was doing, but to the kid it wasn't. It was like it was just so horrible and awkward that I found it
Okay.
disgusting.
With that, then we'll be back next time. In the meantime, don't
Yeah.
forget to join up Robin's free judo class for boys that I believe you've just started running.
This time we will do judo.
Bye.